Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Hitting the Field podcast. It's Jeremy Brener here, and for the last time, we lace up the dancing shoes for a Last Dance recap podcast. And we have two of HTF's best and brightest basketball minds joining me today. A regular on the Last Dance podcast now, Ross Bernstein. Ross, how sad are you that this is the Last Dance podcast?
Well, it really ruins my whole week because I usually have a build up for the week where I know that Sunday I'm gonna sit down on the TV. I've reserved the living room in my apartment with my roommates from about 9 to 11 to watch it. So it's the best sports we have going right now. Obviously, soccer's starting to come back slowly, but it's probably the only taste of basketball we're gonna get for at least the time being until we know a little bit more.
Yeah, it definitely. I think last night was the night where I was like, man, it'd be nice if basketball were on right now, especially just because the whole it just got me real amped. That's the word to use, is amped. Okelo Pena, were you as
hmm
amped last night about these last two episodes as much as we were?
No, absolutely. It felt like a series finale of like, if not the best TV show. You're just like, man, I can't believe the ride has to end. It I got so much closure, so much understanding throughout the entire Bulls championship run. I would have loved to maybe just get a bit taste more, obviously because with basketball not being, but it definitely got me the love for the game that I see where the drive comes from, and you know just was a wonderful experience. I just wish it didn't have to end, to be
Yeah.
honest.
And we'll talk about the documentary as a whole, kind of when after we discuss these last two episodes. But I think yesterday's opening scene was maybe the best one out of any of the ones that we've seen thus far in episode 9,
hmm
when it's Reggie Miller and they talk about him in the 90. They talk about him early on in their career, where they talk about Reggie Miller, playing Michael Jordan in the late 80s, early 90s, and he was kind of Reggie was having the good game, and Mike wasn't. And then he was like, I never refer to Michael Jordan as anything as Michael Jordan ever again. It's only that Black Cat Jordan or Black Jesus.
hmm
Does uh does he deserve that title, Ross, as Black Jesus?
As a fellow Jew, Jeremy, I don't know if I'm the one that could designate him as Black Jesus.
I tried to question the question because I
I
don't know if I can answer this. Okay,
I
Logan, you can answer
yeah,
this.
I can't answer it. I could see where he was trying to go with that. I don't feel comfortable saying it exactly. I feel like I get a couple side eyes. But if you want to say he's the god of basketball, the disciple of what basketball is in that sense, sure, he's Black Jesus. But I don't know if I give him the official title.
As a Catholic, I don't know if we can bless him. Maybe he's a saint, or he's something of another thing in the realm. But I think Reggie Miller hit it head on. I mean, whenever you, I think, are in the presence. I mean, personally, I think maybe you should kiss the hand or something like that, just as a sign of respect, because there's nothing like Michael Jordan, and whenever you get a chance to play with him, it's an unbelievable sight. And I think for people, it's very lucky. I think it's a divine chance whenever you get to play and see the magic for yourself.
I think that it's just, I think the one thing that we've learned throughout this documentary is you never doubt Michael Jordan. Anyone who doubts Michael Jordan, it's like, you're gone. It's like over, bye. Like it's almost like that's what led to everyone's demise. Everyone that faced Michael Jordan throughout their career, and someone that also felt this demise was Brian Russell. And Brian Russell, the wing, like the main defender, I guess uh, you would call him like the Shane Battier of that Jazz team, the guy that is always there to defend the best player, and that's his main role. And Brian Russell, they remember, when the Bulls played the Jazz during his retirement, Michael recalled the story of, he would go over to say hello to Carl and John Stockton, and then Brian
Mhm.
Russell didn't say hello, and he took that and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna whoop some butt." and I'd rather not say but you guys know what other word I would put here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But it almost was like, he used any sort of doubt as motivation. And he also used that 97 MVP race where Malone edged Michael Jordan as motivation, because that was like, and it similar to when he played Barkley in 93, where he was motivated by Barkley winning the MVP over him in 93. It was very ironic, Okelo, about how he used that as motivation in 97 against Karl Malone.
I think it was interesting because I was looking back at something from ESPN when they looked at that MVP season, and Jordan had the higher points, and if I'm not mistaken, the higher like steals per game. But I think Karl had the higher rebounds and assists, and I think that's what slightly edged it. But at Jordan, if you know Jordan, he's like, you can have that, but I'm going to take the title. So it was just like another type of thing. And you can use any MJ, you just need to slightly tick him off for that. And even though he had the most points, he wound up the next season getting the MVP and the trophy. So it's a double dose, I guess, on the hurt of Karl Malone.
So if we look at Karl Malone versus Michael Jordan in 97, Ross, we'll go through this. Points per game. Malone 27.4, MJ he had 29.6. Karl Malone, and that led the league, the 29.6. Rebounds 9.9, so basically 10. Michael Jordan, 5.9. So you give Malone the edge there. Then you have assists. Karl Malone averaging 4 assists a game. Michael's averaging 4.3. So it's basically the same. And if you look at the team record, Chicago won 69 games, and Utah, they won, I believe, what was 64. So, I mean, now, and this is something that we also think about with the MVP, because in 95-96, the Jazz were a 55-win team, and they went from 55 wins to 64. Michael Jordan's team, they went from 72 to 69. So is that somewhat of like, when we look at MVPs, is it more about, how well you improve your team over a sense of time? It's kind of like an unwritten rule. Most valuable player in all intents and purposes should be the best player or the most valuable player, but not necessarily does it ever appear that way.
Yeah, it's more of a what have you done for me lately kind of thing, right? Because Jordan, you can make the case every year that he played was the best player in the league, could win MVP, and was the most valuable to his team, and the most valuable player in the whole entire NBA. But it's just the way it works is they can't give it to him every year, right? LeBron would have a ridiculous amount of MVPs if they went with the best player. But based on those stats, Jordan's a better scorer. He only averaged 1.5 more technically, and very similar in assists. And obviously, Karl Malone's going to get the edge in rebounding simply because he's a big man. He's going to just end up getting more rebounds naturally. The fact that the Jazz had improved, and technically, I guess you could say, it's insane to say the Bulls got worse when you went from a 70-win team to a high 60-win team, but technically they had less wins, right? So this might have been the year where they said, look, we can't give it to Jordan every year. This guy's improved a team that already made it to the finals, and technically the Bulls decrease. I could see the argument that you could give it to Malone. I could also see the argument where you give it to Jordan. He's leading the league in points, and he's obviously, in the sense of the word, the most valuable player. Yeah. But I think Jordan would want to win it every year. I don't think it mattered about stats or anything. It didn't matter if the dude averaged 50,000 points a game. Jordan would be like, I still want the MVP.
I mean, every year it's almost as if there are multiple candidates for MVP. I mean, very rarely I think it's only been one time ever in history where there's been a unanimous MVP, and that was Steph Curry just a few seasons ago. But I think every year the MVP, I think the way it's determined is a bit flawed, just because it's a media based vote, and obviously there's some media where, like, well, if you're an Eastern Conference media member, you're more likely to watch Michael Jordan play, so you're more likely to vote for him, and then than you are for Karl Malone, who's in the West. And if the West is better one year, then you might say, oh well, I'll give it to him, or I'll give it to them. And I don't know. I don't think there's ever a perfect way to crown the MVP, but Michael Jordan doesn't really care, and he uses whatever he can to get him over the hurdle, and this is what he did, and so much so that the next thing that popped up in this episode, I guess we'll talk. We'll start with 97, and we'll go into 98 because there wasn't a whole lot of moving back and forth last night in timelines and such, just because the two timelines were starting to merge. So in 97, Game 5, Game 5, the flu game, the notorious flu game. Now,
Supposedly.
Okelo, in the year 2020, the flu game just sounds totally irresponsible. Do you,
Right.
Michael Jordan, saved face here by saying it was a pizza and it was food poisoning rather than the flu?
Jeremy, I don't know really personally how to put it. I think it could be the stomach flu, it could be food poisoning, who knows? But it just surprised me like when we found out, because I knew about like him eating something bad, but I didn't know like when you get a guy to deliver your food, you get 5 guys to deliver one pizza. I mean, already I think the writing was on the wall for suspicion. It's like me ordering from Postmates or Uber Eats, and there's 5 people delivering me one order. But I'll just say this: it was pretty incredible how not only did that infamous food poisoning game, now whatever you want to call it, that he was able to still go out there and play, burning up, and still able to drop the game to give the Bulls the lead. I mean, that speaks volumes, and it just makes you wonder, like, the lengths you're willing to go to win, even when you're not at your physical best. Michael Jordan, just that, it's stories like that just makes me like, if I have 100-degree flu or whatever, it's like, I can still try to get out there and go. It's another one that adds to the legend, and it's one of my favorite stories, no question.
Ross, I know that The Last Dance was used as a vehicle, kind of like a tell-all autobiography for Michael Jordan, but do you believe this food poisoning story?
If I had to give a percentage, I believe it. I'm going to give it a solid 40%. If Jordan had all this footage, he's basically in charge of how he gets seen in history, right? I mean, obviously when someone as powerful and as wealthy as Jordan, you're going to have a say in almost anything that goes out. That documentary was definitely seen by Jordan. It was approved by Jordan before it went out. It wasn't like he didn't get Tiger King where it was manipulated footage. I'm sure he had a lot more stake in it. If it is true, the trainer should. That is a crime. If someone showed up to my door, like Okelo said, I'm not Michael Jordan. I am the opposite of whatever Michael Jordan is, right? If 5 people came to deliver my pizza, I would be suspicious and not eat it. And they have nothing to gain if I eat a poisonous pizza. You're in Utah. Obviously, everybody in the world knows who you are, but especially since you're in Utah, there's probably fans that will willing to do anything to get that team to get their first ever championship, right? If you bring 5 guys to my pizza, I'm going to be like, Mike, I understand you want a late night snack, but we're going to have to pass on this one. This is just not going to work out. I don't know why they couldn't have gone grocery. Like, I don't know the Utah scene. I'm surprised there's no grocery stores open or anything, but I'll be like, Mike, it's just not worth the risk. Either way, the fact that he was able to play through it, I've never had food poisoning, but I've had a pretty aggressive stomach aches. I can't imagine running up and down the court for 40-something minutes at the highest level of basketball. I could barely do 10 minutes in a 3-on-3 game if my stomach hurts a little. So to have that into it, he just had to block it out, right? I'm sure he was in a ton of pain, but he just mentally had to say, look, I know what's happening, but I just need to put that away and let just the mechanics do what it does. I've been doing this for my whole life. I know what to do when the ball's in my hands. I just got to let it take over. And he did. And it one of the most iconic games, if not the most iconic game to have ever been played in the NBA.
So here's the thing, Ross, and okay, I'll ask you this question, and I know what the answer is going to be. And if you answer this wrong, you're lying.
Okay.
If you are working at this pizza place and you get an order from Michael Jordan, even if you are not the delivery driver, do you go on the ride to go and maybe possibly deliver Michael Jordan a pizza? Yes or no?
Hell yeah! Excuse me if I say that, but I mean, if I'm gonna get a chance to meet Michael Jordan, even if it's just for a millimeter, I can at least say that I was with my homie
Exactly.
when I went to go do it. I don't, personally, I'd be like, hey, I would try to maybe grab one of my Jordans and say, hey, could you sign it for me? Maybe I don't know, I don't care, but at least to say that I did it and nobody can deny me. Well, in that era in the '90s with no social media. I'd be the happiest man
Exactly.
alive.
You would. And to me, I think that this was the first mistake. You don't use your name for the pizza.
Mhm.
Yes.
You don't even use
That,
your first name because here's the thing. Hotels and all that. There's obviously rumors about oh, what hotel is the opposing team staying at, and there are people that are like almost like storm chasers, but are autograph chasers. And they will find out where the team stays, and they will camp out at the hotel and go inside and try to get autographs. If I'm using Ross Bernstein. If people are trying to come out for me, I'm
what
using
does
the
that
name.
have
My
supposed
name
to
is
mean?
Ross Bernstein. Like, order the pizza for Ross Bernstein and at this room, and I will have someone else go and get the pizza, not Michael Jordan. So like to me, I don't know. I would have been a little bit more wise about it. Now, look, I don't think that people were trying to manipulate the pizza to poison Michael Jordan. Like, how much of a like superhero story like is that? Like, I know like this basketball, this Last Dance has been kind of portrayed as that, as like almost like in a way like these people have all these specific powers and it's their time to rise to the throne and similar to that. But I don't think it's going to get that far to where people are uh, poisoning others to get an edge in a game. I mean, maybe, but hey, maybe the Jazz were that desperate. Maybe that pizzeria.
I would not be surprised if he was poisoned by it. I don't think the Jazz had something to do with it. I don't think they made the call to the pizza place. But I know, I mean, I wouldn't do it, but I know some very, very, very obsessive fans that I could
hmm
not say for a fact that they would be ethical enough not to do it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they were trying to really to kill Michael Jordan, but I thought give him a stomach ache at least. Like, realistically, like I'm sure there's fans all around the world. Like, if I had to give an example, like I don't think there's any example right now in this country about an intense as a rivalry. But let's think of an FC Barcelona versus Real Madrid game. I could not be surprised if a Real Madrid fan, if he knew Lionel Messi was in this hotel and was delivering a pizza, that he wouldn't do something. I couldn't say that for a fact, right? I wouldn't do it, obviously. I don't think anyone that I know personally would do it. But it's hard to say that no one would do it. People are insane and really take this stuff seriously. Like really seriously.
Yeah.
There have
And
been sometimes I remember. Sorry, Jeremy, but I just wanted
my,
to. I just remember sometimes like in certain games or whatever, like an old school footage. Like I know of this one story my dad told me, and it was a Steelers game, and I think that they were playing the Broncos or somebody. And I remember like he was sitting next to somebody who tried to throw a snowball at John Elway in the middle of a play to try to get an incomplete pass. Like I'm not gonna lie, there are some of those fans out there, like Ross mentioned, who would do things to that edge. But I'm just saying, man, you would have to risk going to jail just for your team to win, man. I mean, there are some fans that are just that crazy.
Yeah, so Michael Jordan was the hero of Game Five, the flu game, or the food poisoning game. We'll never really know. We'll call it the flu game just because it has a better ring to it, and I don't think it's going to ever change from the flu game to the food poisoning game.
Yeah,
It's
no, no,
still
it's the flu game. They
still
already made shoes. They
poisoning.
already made the
That's
flu games.
food poisoning game. That's 5 syllables. Flu game, two syllables is done. So, but Game Six, the hero was Steve Kerr. So in the earlier parts of the documentary, it looked like in one episode kind of highlighted one member of the team. We saw Scottie Pippen get kind of his own episode, Dennis Rodman, Phil Jackson, and I guess if there was a side star to this episode, it was Steve Kerr. So,
Mhm.
and I found this to be really enticing. I think that Steve Kerr's part in the story is actually pretty significant. Just considering where he was a few episodes ago, where Michael Jordan and him got in that fight during training camp, and then now the next season we kind of got to learn a little bit more about him, about his father. So his father was murdered, about a decade before Michael's was, and to me, I found it very interesting, surprising actually, Okelo, that they never discussed this, and it was kind of interesting because it gave Steve Kerr like a sense of belonging. It was like this was how he earned it, and in when you earn something like this, when you earn a spot on this team, because I think what we learned is you had to earn a spot to be on a championship team. It wasn't just you showed up and you got 3 rings or 1 ring like Scott Burrell, but it was as if you earned your stripes, and I think it's important that all of these people, especially the most important ones like Dennis, like Scotty, like Phil Jackson, there was a reasoning behind it, why they ended up at this point. So, for watching Steve Kerr, how did that make you feel?
I'll say this, it made me appreciate more of Steve Kerr, not only as a player, but as a man as well. I've always said to a group of people, I'm not sure if I mentioned it to anybody at Hitting the Field, but I always said Steve Kerr is one of the most automatic shooters. When you need a clutch play, he's the guy that you call on. And he has the career accolades to do so. I'll say that, knowing his work ethic and his background, it makes me appreciate even now more than ever. Even though we can say whatever we want to him as Warriors head coach, oh, he had Steph, he had Kevin Durant, but he has championship background knowledge, and you do not it seems like you don't rattle him, you don't scare him. Steve Kerr just knows how to work hard, and when the moment comes, even though it may not be at the best at the beginning, he finds a way to get it done. I've learned so much more, and it just makes me, want to root for him. Maybe if the Warriors get back to playing basketball, I don't necessarily sure yet if I want to do that, but as a player, I can definitely respect him with his talents, and as well as the fact of just how he overcame so much. I have an appreciation more for Steve Kerr, and I'm kind of glad that they gave him that spotlight in this team, because we all know what he went off to accomplish even more. And he was just as important, even though he wasn't the main star. He was a role player. He was basically the late 90s version of John Paxson. I figured it was important, and, glad that I got to know more about Steve Kerr beyond just the bench of the Warriors.
Yeah, and the Warriors grind my gears a little bit.
Same.
I think they grind everyone's gears a little bit. But I will say, I think that there was some added respect for Steve Kerr, one of the greatest to ever be part of the NBA. The man's got 7 rings. He's up there, and he's young too. That's the thing, and he's still in the game. There's a chance, I think, that Steve Kerr could get up there with Phil Jackson, and maybe get to the double digits. I think he's only 54. He's got at least 10 plus years if he wants in the NBA, just because of how much he's accomplished with the Warriors so far. So to me, I think that it's a given. Or he has 3 rings with the Bulls.
He has two with
So he has
San Antonio.
eight rings. 8 rings, excuse me. So yeah, he has three with the Bulls, 2 with the Spurs, and now 3 with the Warriors. So that's 8 rings.
Imagine what he could have had if the Suns won a championship, Jeremy, because he was the general manager of that team, and they were very close, those Suns teams with Steve Nash.
I mean, some people just have it. So Ross, do you think that Steve Kerr, his background and how he got to the NBA and his career in the NBA, how much do you think that his career before the NBA helped him in the NBA, and how much do you think his NBA career helped him in his coaching career?
Well, I think in the NBA he definitely had the underdog mentality, because from what it seems, he wasn't highest scout out of high school, and obviously coming out of college, it didn't seem like he was going to really amount to anything in the NBA. And it goes to show you that a lot of players in the NBA, if they could just accept a role player role and know what they got to do, they could have a long, great career in basketball and long thereafter. I don't remember where I heard this or when I heard this, but they say that the best coaches in the NBA are not the best players in the NBA. It's the people that know the most and listen the most in the NBA. So the guys that had to work their way up and go through a lineage of, then he had to go through Paxson, and he had saw through Jordan, and he learned all these different things, obviously working with Phil Jackson. That really helped him in his post-NBA career. because once you've worked with the greats and you've worked with some of the biggest, you could say, egos and personalities with a Rodman and a Jordan, it made his life coaching that Warriors team with all the superstars probably so easy. He'd been there, done that. If you could be on a team with Dennis Rodman and understand a personality like that, you could basically handle any personality. Draymond Green's nothing compared to that. And working with the greats, working with a Phil Jackson and a Popovich, obviously, when he played for the Spurs, you just take that, and obviously he had his own twist on it, and he adapted the game to what he knew. And it's funny because a coach like Popovich and a Phil Jackson, they had a very set way of playing, of coaching, right? They had the triangle offense, and then Popovich, obviously, he's known for maybe a slower pace, running plays, and he not say rule with an iron fist, but he had his tactics. Where if you play for Steve Kerr now, it seems like you're playing with a very loose way of playing basketball, right? It's fun, it's shooting, it's everything you want. And I think after playing with Jordan, I think he took that and said, look, I see what it's like to play with the most competitive man that yells at you, screams at you every practice, telling you to do exactly what is told, do this, do that. And he went and did the exact opposite, it seems like, with the Warriors. A very loose, fun-going team where it just seemed like everyone, until maybe KD got there and ruined a little chemistry, everyone was just having tons of fun and just playing the game they already knew how to play. So I think just overall the different ups and downs he had in his career with different coaches and players, it led him to being one of the most successful coaches that we've seen in the recent NBA.
Yeah, and that 97 game winner really was kind of, I guess, the peak of his playing career, if you will. But then obviously, that wasn't just the end. That was championship number 2 of 8. So, I mean, and 2 of probably many more after 8. So definitely earned a lot of respect for Steve Kerr last night. And I think he's one of the more interesting characters we have in the NBA. And I think the NBA is better for it. He's Hall of Famer for sure. I know he's not in as a player, but as a contributor and as a coach, I imagine he'll be in the Hall of Fame in due time. So then we go. So that was 97, but now we get to 1998, and we're kind of back. We're kind of back in the present day, if you will. So they're playing the Pacers. And this is kind of where the episode started last night, was with Reggie Miller and all of that. But they were talking about how the Pacers, Ross, were the hardest team that they had to face other than Detroit. And it was a grit and grind series. It was back and forth. And I think when it really started to hit was that Game 4 when Reggie hits the game winner, one of the most iconic game winners in NBA history. Did Reggie Miller push off? Was that an offensive foul?
I mean, it's playoff basketball. It doesn't matter whether or not it's technically an offensive foul. The ref's not going to call it, and I don't think Jordan would want it any other way because obviously, I mean, Jordan said he didn't push off last night in the other game, but whatever. It's okay if we want to get down to the technicalities of it. Yes, sure, it's a foul. You're not allowed to drive your forearm forward and push a guy off, but it's playoff basketball. It's the 90s. I don't care that there's no call. If you're Jordan, you got to be prepared for a push. You push back, right? And I think Jordan knows that. I don't think Jordan got up thinking, I cannot believe the refs didn't call that. I think he saw that shot sink and said, I cannot believe I let that little scrawny kid push me. I cannot believe that. All right. You'll see me next game. You'll see me. I think it's more of that's just the grit and grind of the game. And I think even in modern NBA, when it comes down to the last 2 seconds, they always say, don't worry about the ref. The ref's not going to call anything. You play basketball as if it's a street game up to 21 and 2020. Next shot wins. No rules, no nothing. Let's play. So I have no problem with the no call.
Okay, Lo, do you agree with that, or do you think that there should have been a call there?
Man, I had to just rewind a couple of times. I don't know necessarily if I would say if it was an offensive push-off, but all I have to say is that Reggie Miller got really crafty, he got really sly, and he just got, if not one of the luckiest no calls in playoff basketball history. And he made that shot count. That's why he's one of the best 3-point shooters of all time. And you don't win games sometimes based off of pure skill. It has to involve a lot of luck, and it has to involve a lot of craftiness. And he just was fortunate enough that he got away with it. especially in the Hornets' nest that was the old Pacers arena, and he was able to make it count.
What I found to be very frustrating about that was not had nothing to do with the play, but the fact that Reggie Miller was that kind. He said this in the broadcast in last night's episode. He said that I was doing everything that I could to try to force the referees to make a call. Yet he's very critical of that when he's broadcasting. Like, to me, that's a hypocrite.
The thing about Reggie Miller that makes me interesting, and even this is like some of the other documentaries, like the one where it was the Pacers-Knicks series, the old school rivalry of the 90s, is that Reggie Miller, you don't realize it, as great as a three-point shooter and as great as a player he was actually kind of, if not a dirty player at times, and a kind of aggressive player. And the fact he'll do anything to get under your skin, but at the same time, he'll score and he'll play as dominant as the other team's next big superstar. So it doesn't surprise me now that I know more about Reggie the player and how he'll do whatever it takes to win, to get under an opponent's skin. And it just makes me think like, so there is more to the madness behind the best 3-point shooter in the game other than Steph Curry and Ray Allen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's a hypocrite if he said that. He's a hypocrite. Because, I mean, he's critical of that. Like, for Harden, he's like, he dogs on Harden all the time. Yet when that, but as a player, he would have been doing the exact same thing. And that's just frustrating to me. But that's besides the point. They go to a game 7, which they were not very familiar with, and they were trailing in that fourth quarter as well. But they eventually, they win that jump ball, Kerr for 3. I can see like the whole I can see that whole sequence just playing out in like present day, because it's happened. Like, I feel like it sounded like a sequence that the Warriors would have done. They would have, gotten a lucky bounce, gotten a 3 to Steve Kerr. When Steve Kerr shoots the ball, it's going to go in. Just like if Steph or Clay shoots the 3, it's going to go in. So, like, to me, there were just so many shades of that were reminiscent of this Warriors team. So I just found that to be kind of interesting. But they go on to win Game 7. But in Game 7, and this is where Gus comes into play. And this was maybe the best part, in my opinion, of the last 2 episodes was the Gus's segment, where he kind of took over the father figure role for Michael Jordan after his father had passed away. And Ross, I found this to be just it was, in my opinion, not just the best moments. It could have been the best moments, not just from last night, but the best moment from the entire 10 episodes.
Yeah, no, it was really a moving moment. Well, we learned a lot about Michael Jordan, the competitor, and obviously the person, but you still didn't see a lot of his soft side. I don't know if there is much of one, but most of it was how intense he was and how much he wanted to win. But I think that Gus segment really showed the humanity in someone as big as Michael Jordan. I know he's a god in basketball, Black Jesus, but at the end of the day, he's still someone that lost his father, and he's a person. And it was awesome seeing Gus come back, and he just was very old fashioned. He just vibed. He's like, when he got the game ball, and he was like, that's all right. I like it. That's all right. I almost cried. That was probably the closest I came to crying watching this whole documentary, because you could just see that that's really someone that he loved. Gus would go see him if MJ needed help in the middle of the night, and same thing with MJ to Gus. Anytime he was in the hospital, MJ probably has one of the most hectic schedules at this point in the world in the 90s, one of the most sought-after people. He still made the time to see someone that he loved, and that was like a father figure to him. It was really awesome to see, and I'm glad that they showed it in this documentary.
Yeah. Okelo, that was pretty cool from last night's episode.
It kind of moved me a little bit. It was probably one of the, after last week's episode with him losing his dad, of course, it was one of those emotional moments where I got teared up a little bit. I think Michael Jordan has been so blessed and so fortunate to have so much support in his life. his father, his mother, but to have somebody like that you connect with, losing, if not the biggest supporter in your life, it really is touching. And, to think that all these security guards that MJ have, you would just think they're just random people doing their job, but there's more to life to them. And for the fact that Gus was battling cancer, and, that he was there with his wife, and, making sure to be there, it really shows, as Ross mentioned, not only the human side, because even though there wasn't as much, you don't really see that on the basketball court, but that there's more to life beyond basketball. And and just to see that, it's very touching and very special.
Yeah, that was maybe the coolest moment of the whole thing when he got the game ball. That was just like, how perfect was that? Like, he came back for game 7, and then not only does he come back for game 7, they win game 7, and that was, to me, one of the coolest parts of the entire series. But then we get to the finals, the '98 finals, the probably one of the best final series in NBA history. Just because there were not just for game 6, but for the series before that. Game 1 came down to a very tight finish. The Bulls come out on top. Game 2, the Bulls come back again. The Jazz come back, win game 2. The Bulls win game 3, win game 4. Very simple, very big win in game 3. In game 5 in Utah, or game 5 in Chicago, Bulls can win on their home floor. It's theirs for the taking, and the Jazz prove why they're in the finals. They win game 5. But during this whole mess, maybe the funniest part of all the episodes was when was Dennis Rodman going to leave in the middle of the finals for Nitro. That was pretty to go hang out with Hulk Hogan, Okelo.
Yeah.
What did you make of this situation?
I've watched another documentary about this whole incident thing, and to me, I'm surprised how Phil Jackson handled the whole thing. You're one of your biggest contributors on the team doesn't show up to practice to go to WCW Monday Nitro, and for Dennis Rodman doing what he did. It didn't surprise me. I mean, like, it just made me laugh because Phil Jackson handled Dennis Rodman as well as any coach or player could. I don't think in this era what Dennis Rodman has done in the past would slide with anybody. I just thought of it as just, well, it's just Dennis being Dennis. He's out there to have a good time, party all night, and do what he can. And what's even more funny, I wish they kind of would have mentioned this a little bit towards it, but like the fact that this was even building up for a pay-per-view eventually that Karl Malone would be a part of. He would be teaming with Diamond Dallas Page in that, and I forget the pay-per-view, I think it was Bash at the Beach. It was just so funny, and I'm just like, oh man. But I mean, you have to have so much confidence that you're like, I could do this and not even miss a beat. And Dennis didn't miss a beat. He wound up helping more and being more in Karl Malone's head for the rest of that series.
Yeah, I was. I just thought, and they made such a big deal about him leaving the team at such a very important time. And then they had all of the. I think the best scene out of all of this whole 10 episodes was when he snuck out in the back, and they chased him as if he was a movie star. That was
paparazzi.
Paparazzi, yes, Ross. What did you make of the chase of Dennis Rodman?
I mean, you just went from a finals game to a nationally televised wrestling event on the greatest dynasty of all time for basically any sport. Of course you're going to get chased by the press. You have to explain yourself. But in my mind, it comes down to the simple fact of you got to let Dennis be Dennis. When he's on the court, I don't think there's any question in anyone's mind. He's going to give 110%. He's going to get as many rebounds as possible. He's going to get in the head of anyone he plays with. It's not a matter of effort. I think it's just if you let him be a little more free and loosen his leash a little, he's going to give you 100% and love to play with you. Which is all that really came down to, because once it was game time, there's no more jokes. There's no more I'm playing around or anything. It's 100% intensity 100% of the time. Of course, they're gonna have the media chase them. I love the scene where they showed the poor media communications guy just being like, all right, so what we gotta do is
Here's the game plan.
we gotta get here's the game plan. And it worked. He seemed like he got out. He got it to his truck right in time. But it was it just shows that the fandom back then for that Bulls team was probably the highest it's going to be ever for any team in the NBA. Even with this Warriors team, there's no comparison.
My question is this though, Jeremy, for as us as journalism students and stuff like that. I mean, how would that feel like being one of the reporters and stuff to try to go after Dennis Rodman to try to get a quote or try to get a scoop for a story after, him going from wrestling back to Bulls practice?
Oh, it's an absolute rush. I remember the thing that I've had that's closest resembling that moment was when UCF beat Cincinnati last season on our home floor. It was the first ranked matchup in what was at the time CFE Arena history, and the students rushed the floor. Media was rushing the floor. You had to figure out where you were going to go. You had to figure out, who do I follow? Do I go this way? Do I go this way? And it was a real rush. Like it was a lot of it was a good time, I must say. And that's probably the closest I've ever been to actually chasing someone. So you can only imagine, the heightened level where it's the NBA finals, it's Dennis Rodman, it's the Chicago Bulls. Like, to me, I just think that would be crazy. There was so much strategy involved in where do I stand, who do I go to, how am I going to get Dennis out? Like, it was just it was a fun moment in general. But then we move on to Game 6. The Bulls, and what I thought was kind of interesting. Do you think Michael Jordan packed one suit to Utah, or did he pack two?
Packed one.
Well, you got to pack one suit, man. I mean, the one that you do before the game, and then the one that you have right after the game. It's just the same change of clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, there's no game. There's not even a thought of a Game 7 I can imagine in Michael Jordan's mind. That's just not something that he thinks about in those kind of scenarios.
But I think, though, looking back at that, I mean, for those back-to-back years, I mean, the Jazz really had them on the ropes. There were just instances and peaks where they could have had the Bulls, whether if not in 97, but in 98. I think a lot of people forget how really close that they were, with the exception of the Game 3 blowout, because if I remember correctly, that was the lowest score by a team in the NBA Finals in the shot clock history. And, either way, I mean, Stockton and Malone, if not the best duo never to win a title. I mean, Jerry Sloan, if not arguably one of the best coaches ever to not win a title. That team had its moments, and it's just little slips here and there. They could have potentially pushed it to a Game 7, I believe, if not 97 or 98.
Well, the whole thing with that game, Michael Jordan looked tired, very tired. Scottie Pippen was dealing with the back injury. Do you think if the Jazz came out on top in Game 6, what would a Game 7 have looked like? Do you think that Utah might have actually pulled it off?
I believe so. I believe so, Jeremy. I mean, sorry, Ross, you go ahead.
In the great words of Kanye West, I guess we'll never know. I guess we'll never know. I mean, I can't imagine Jordan wouldn't show up for Game 7. It's based on the series with the Pacers. I think it's very obvious that it's not the fact that he can't do a Game 7. It's just that he never had to, right? I think a Game 7 in that Jazz arena, I've never seen that footage of those Jazz arenas. I've never seen something like that. The only thing I can maybe think about is when I used to watch OKC games. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. OKC games. Just because, I mean, I don't want to talk trash about the cities, but that's the main attraction happening in those cities. There's nothing really else going on. No offense. When you go to Miami Heat game,
they don't have another
there's nothing else.
Team, so they put all of their energy towards their one team.
Yeah, when you go to a Miami Heat game, there's people downtown, people in Brickell. No one showed up to the second half. I mean, we have amazing fans in Miami, but there's a million other things to do if you don't want to watch that basketball game. In Utah, it seemed like the whole state was cheering for that Jazz team. And maybe even some surrounding states. I'm not the best with geography, but I'm sure there's some surrounding states that are still massive Utah Jazz fans. That arena, that have earbuds for every single person. it's mayhem. A Game 7 would have been amazing to see, but I guess we'll never know.
But if you look at that Game 6, Michael had 45 points on 35 shots.
Mm-hmm.
Only other person to go in double figures, Tony Kukoc at 15. Tony Kukoc had a good game, 7-14 from the field, 15 points. But nobody else was in double figures. You look at Scottie Pippen, who had the back injury, only played 25 minutes. Scott Burrell, minus 17. I mean, the thing is, like, to me, if they ever went to a Game 7, I think the Bulls would have had a lot to overcome because the depth just wasn't there. Whereas with the Jazz, you know, Karl Malone had 31 and 11. Hornacek had 17 points, 10 points from John Stockton. So, like, their offense was a bit more balanced. Antoine Carr also had 9 off the bench. So that game, that team, the Jazz were a lot more balanced, and you argue that the bench that they had was better than the Bulls bench. So I think that if Game 7 happened, I mean, you know what happens when you doubt Michael Jordan, but it would have been very difficult for them to have won Game 7 on the road in Utah, with the team as dilapidated as it was, especially with Scottie being hurt, with, you know, just that team just wasn't all put together 100%. So I don't know. I think that there was a chance that Utah might have snagged it. But nonetheless, in the great words of Kanye West, I guess we'll never know.
Sadly. And that was, if not only for Reggie Miller and the Pacers from the previous series, but for Stockton and Malone, that was as close as they got, sadly, Jeremy, because after that, they didn't even get back to a Western Conference final. That's very disappointing.
That was their last good chance to win. But then there were talks. So Michael Jordan makes the shot. And that sequence, Bob Costas kind of paints the picture. It's one of the greatest sequences ever in NBA history, in a 30-second sequence. And, you know, on Wednesday night, they are ESPN is hosting a 30. It's like a movie. I think they're calling it Game 6 the movie, where they're showing the game in high definition. They're showing never before seen footage. But that game is highlighted by the shot Michael Jordan takes at the end of the game. And is that the best shot in NBA history, Okelo?
I think it's the most memorable. To say it's the greatest, I mean, there are so many great shots. I mean, but I think if you were to put a top 10 list, I think it would have to be number one. I would think the closest one I would say would be, and I think Ross might like this one, I would say it would be Ray Allen's clutch 3 to send it into overtime in Game 6 of the finals against the Spurs. I think that shot is so memorable because not only was it the last shot Michael Jordan took in a Bulls uniform, but that stuck, if not one of the best performances of a player in a game, and as well as just it. And I still, and what I even remember looking back at that shot was the way that Brian Russell just like he got, I think, the hardwood snake just kind of get under his sneakers, and you know, who knows what would have happened if he would have stayed on his feet if MJ makes that shot. I think from that crossover to the shot in the easy seconds, because you knew it was going to go in, and you know, you could just feel the energy of the Jazz Arena, the Delta Center, just kind of sag. It's memorable in every aspect.
Yeah, Ross, what do you think is the best shot ever?
I would love to say I'm going to give an unbiased opinion, but I'm not. The Ray Allen shot, in my opinion, is still the greatest shot of all time. I mean, I can't do anything unbiased because I was there and I remember watching that shot in my living room. I was sick. I was the only one in my downstairs watching it, and I woke my mom up because I yelled and she was not too happy about it. And obviously I was a huge Heat fan. So to me, that's still the greatest shot of all time. I can't give an unbiased one just because there is. But, I mean, Jordan's is iconic because that's his, you could say, his last real shot as an NBA player. I mean, obviously his stint with the Wizards is not one that most people think about. But when you think about Jordan, you think about the Bulls. What a last memory. What a last image to think of. That is poetic at its finest.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's still one of the greatest shots of all time.
If anything, that made me wish that he didn't go to Washington.
Yeah, absolutely.
because it was like that was such a perfect ending to his story, and he decided to add like a little footnote at the end that it was like that, like that's such a perfect ending. But he talks a little bit about in the aftermath after he leaves is that he wishes he could have gone. I mean, he won the MVP in his last season with the Bulls, so no question he could have gone another season. And he was talking about well, do we go for 7? And that he thinks that everyone would have come back. And I wish that they had asked more than just Michael Jordan, or they had shown more than just Michael Jordan answering that question, because I think it would have been telling to see if if multiple people would have come back. I think the reason though why they didn't is because I think the answer was that I don't think Scottie Pippen would have come back. And I
Well,
think
he
that
wanted the money. He needed the money.
exactly. I don't think that that's how they wanted to end the episode. I think they wanted to give you like this sense of mystery that, oh, this team could have been the team, and they ultimately opted against that. So to me, I don't think that they ever were going to stay together, even if they didn't make that statement at the beginning of the season that 82-0, Phil's not coming back. I just don't think that obviously I think that hurt the team in the long run, but I don't. I think it being it being over 20 years after the fact, I think people are content with how it ended. I think Michael Jordan, says that he's not, but I think that he shouldn't. Look, it's hard for Michael Jordan to be against that whole to be against anything that happened in his career, just because he had the most successful career in NBA history. So why would you be upset about any of it? I don't know. To me, I feel like Michael Jordan has nothing to regret, nothing to be ashamed of. He won 6 championships. What more can you ask for?
One more championship.
Get close to as Bill
Give me a
Russell
shot.
as much as you can. I think that's what maybe even drove it a little more, Jeremy. And I think even when you mentioned about MJ wanting to come back, I mean, Jerry Reinsdorf even said like he wanted maybe just one more chance, and he talked to Phil Jackson about it. But Phil felt like this is as good as it gets. I think I'm going to walk away, and then what would happen next? Phil leaves the year and then goes on to coach another great team in Los
Yeah.
Angeles.
So, I mean, now that the documentary's over, do you like looking back on the whole thing? Is this like how put it on a scale of like greatest TV shows, movies that you've seen in your life, and where it compares? Okay, Lo, I'll start with you. Just what did this documentary series mean to you?
Um, Man, that's very tough. I feel like what it meant to me was a full understanding of what my dad and mom witnessed in the 90s, because I think it was so hard to really entail so much. And even for my mom and dad, because they're Knicks and Spurs fans, especially my mom, a diehard Knicks fans, just for her to relive those memories. She's like, the times that we were so close and it was just so hard every time. It gave me more to the myth beyond the man, and it made me feel like even though I wasn't there, I was a part. It had the closure that I felt like I felt at peace with it, even though it did wanted me a little bit wanting more. But this documentary series meant a lot, not only for this time frame that we're in right now, but just something that makes me understand more of that transition. Why I love the NBA as well. Where the this team, this generational team that I never got to see, but to witness everything and to know everything, every history. It doesn't matter. Michael Jordan, Phil Jackson, Jerry Krause. I feel happy knowing that I have better knowledge and it can lead me into more in-depth basketball conversations.
Yeah, Ross, what did this documentary series mean to you?
It gave me an insight on possibly the greatest generation of basketball that might have ever been and might ever be, and the greatest player to ever do this, and the most in-depth look that anyone's ever gotten. Even people that watch Jordan probably didn't know all those things, even when they watched him in the '90s. There's no comparison, at least for me in my lifetime, of something that I've watched. Where every Sunday I was I was excited to learn something new. I was excited to sit down on the couch and watch it. I'm as someone that can never stay still, as you guys might know, see me hitting the field. I like to move around. Sitting still for those 2 hours and watching that documentary, I feel like I was transported back into the 90s. And I got a real taste of what it was like in that time to be in the NBA and watch the Bulls, and just how important that team was and how important Michael Jordan was. I talk to my cousin almost every time after the episode, either the night of or the day after, because he obviously watched them in the 90s. He's old enough to have watched them in the 90s, and he's like, this is the closest you ever get to seeing that. They did a great job at depicting every single thing and the feeling you get. He always talks about the feeling you get when you watch them, and the feeling of, you know what Jordan's going to do anytime he touches the ball. You know what the result he's going to give and the energy he's going to give. And we might never see that again. As many great players as there are, I don't know if we'll ever see a player dominate the league in one era like a Michael Jordan. There's players that will go up in history as amazing players that never won a championship because of this one man, really. I mean, I know it's a great team. Because of this one man, these people are going to be in obscurity for the rest of NBA history. Hakeem Olajuwon snuck in too, and that's possibly why he's considered one of the greatest centers of all time, because he got those two. If Jordan didn't retire and didn't get those two, we might not even look at him in that way. We might look at him like a Patrick Ewing, a great player, but not an all-time. I mean, he is an all-time great center, but not the greatest center. There's an asterisk. There's always going to be an asterisk next to a Barkley or a Ewing because of one guy. He stopped all these great players getting the championship, and no other player has done that since or before.
I think Michael Jordan defined greatness with this documentary. It really gave a glimpse as to what it means to be great at something. And that's, I think, what I'm going to take away from this the most, is the fact that Michael Jordan did everything in his power to be the greatest at his craft. And it was, in a way, just like, I don't think that anyone can duplicate what Michael did ever. I don't think we're ever going to see a team win 3 straight championships again. I mean, considering the fact that Michael Jordan was able to do it, how much energy it took out of him and his teammates to win 3 in a row, and the fact that the Golden State Warriors, probably the best team that can rival these Bulls, couldn't get 3 in a row, is a testament to show how difficult it truly is. And I think that was also seen, is not only is it super difficult to do it, but how much respect I think that we all got because of what he was able to do with what he had. And I think that that's something that should be taken over. And also, in a way, in order to be as great as Michael Jordan is, it takes sacrifice. He sacrificed a lot in his career in order to be where he was. And I don't think we're ever going to see someone like Michael Jordan again. And I think something that was also mentioned, there's Andrea Kramer, who she talked about how Michael Jordan built his celebrity, built his brand and all that without social media. And I think now that we live in a world with social media, I don't think someone will have the ability to be like Michael Jordan again. I think that we're seeing that somewhat with LeBron, but I think LeBron lives in a world where he has an image to uphold, and I think he has to be a little more apologetic than Michael Jordan was. And I think everyone after LeBron will be the same. I think everyone has to be somewhat apologetic. There will be more critics for those kind of people. And we talked about, even when he was facing critics in '93 with Michael Jordan, how he was able to overcome it. Those voices are louder now. And those voices, there are more of those. The voices are louder and there's more of them. And I think that I just don't see it ever happening again. And I think that's makes me appreciate it that much more and appreciate his career. There were so many things about the documentary that I knew about originally, but watching it actually happen, seeing it in motion, made me appreciate it a lot more. And it kind of enforces the power of sports again in a time where we don't have that access to live sports. And I think that it justified the reasoning for why sports change society and how they affect society. And President Obama had something to say about that last night, about how he changed the opinion of the black athlete, how he changed the opinion of just society in general. And David Stern said how he grew the game. And that's what sports does. Sports has the power to change the world. Michael Jordan was able to do that. And I think that's a good place to park the car. Thank you guys for dancing with me one last time on Hitting the Field's Last Dance podcast. Ross and Okelo, thank you so much. The Hitting the Field podcast will continue throughout the summer. We have more episodes this week. We're going to try to get some Hitting the Crew episodes in. Take me out to the podcast, working on episodes for that as well. Perhaps a GOAT debate return. I know that's also in the cards. So be sure to tune in and catch up on all the Hitting the Field episodes by subscribing to our YouTube page and following us on Twitter and Instagram at Hitting the Field. You can also check us out on Apple Podcasts, where you can catch every podcast we've done throughout the year. So be sure to check that out. Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Okelo. It's been a pleasure as always. And we'll catch you on the flip side.